We call it adapted patterns because it's truly adapted to the weather and the bass season for any specific GPS location in the world.
Welcome to the Woman Angler and Adventurer Podcast, inspiring real women with a passion for fishing and the outdoors to go get their adventure on. Now, here's your fearless host, Angie Scott.
All right, everyone, welcome to this week's episode of the Woman Angler and Adventurer Podcast. And I have the creator of an app that I'm sure many of you listening already have and use, because everyone I talk to says, oh yeah, I use that app and I use it too. So when I had the opportunity to chat with him here at iCast, I thought, you know what, let's do it. Let's find out a little bit behind the creation of this app. So Mike Mehlmann, welcome to the show.
Nice to be here. Thank you, Angie.
All right, so the app I'm talking about is BassForecast. And I got to tell you the story about how I first heard about the app. I don't know if you're a big music fan, but a lady that I interviewed on the show a while back, it's actually how I met her, and we've since become friends and gone on a couple of fishing trips. But me being in Nashville, I'm around a lot of music people. There's an artist by the name of Brittany Howard who is a diehard angler. She's the lead singer of Alabama Shakes, and she's now gone off on her own. She's got like 14 Grammy Awards under her belt, so you need to check her out. But she's actually the one who told me about the BassForecast app, because I had her come out on my pontoon to do some fishing on Percy Priest Lake, which is the lake I'm on, and she pulled up the app before we went out to check the conditions and see what the chances were that we were going to catch some fish. So,
well, my wife is a big bass angler thanks to me introducing her to it, and she's a big country music fan, so we'll have to have her do a country song about BassForecast.
Yeah. Well, Brittany is not necessarily a country artist, even though she's in Nashville. I never know how to describe her music. People ask me all the time. I mean, it's rock, it's soul, you just have to check it out. Alabama Shakes. You'll probably love it. Your wife will too.
I have very eclectic taste. I grew up in Chicago, around blues bars.
Yep, you'll love it.
So yeah, I love it. I love rock, country.
You'll be their biggest fan. So
it's just like fishing, right? There's good music and bad music. There's good fishing and bad fishing, no matter what you're fishing for.
Yeah. So tell people a little bit about what is the BassForecast app and why should people download it?
Yeah, I'll start with, the reason why we developed it in the first place. Like a lot of people with family, work obligations, I don't get to fish as often as I'd like to. Maybe once a month, and I found myself too often on the wrong time. You should have been here yesterday. Yep, I know you know what I'm talking about, right? A lot of you listening in know what I'm talking about. And, when I went to college, I thought I was going to be a fisheries biologist. I was studying biology and water engineering, and been a lifelong reader and avid, just consumer of anything related to how the environment affects fishing, right? And that's why you see a lot of the top pros are, they're really scientific. And so one day I met a guy from AccuWeather, and I was just commenting to him. I said, your fishing forecast isn't that great. And he said, what do you mean? I said, it's generic. It's multi-species. A bass prefers warm water, a trout cold water. And he said to me, is anyone doing a species-specific forecast? And I didn't know. So we did a little research and discovered no one was. But it's really the number one thing on anglers' mind every time they're going, Either they already have a trip planned and they're wondering how the weather's going to affect the fishing, or they're trying to cherry pick the days that give them the best odds. Because if I can only go this weekend or next, it's highly valuable to me if I can only go 10 times a year to know that next weekend my odds are going to be better. It doesn't guarantee success, but it's like a batting average in baseball, right? If your basics are good and your principles are good, you're going to hit the ball more often than if not. So that is the genesis for why we started BassForecast. It was first to help people understand how the weather affects the bite and to pick best days, because it's a lot more complicated than skiing or snowboarding or camping, where you can just look at the weather report. Because, right, water's an insulator. It takes a while to adjust to the air. That all goes into our formula. So, Angie, our first step in developing the app was to come up with a formula that ranks the days from 1 to 10, with 10 being like they should be really active based on sound scientific principles, indexed specifically to bass only. Not trout, not walleye, not crappie, just bass. Hope that answers your question.
Yeah.
That's kind of what the product does.
Okay. All right, so I've been using the app. There's a lot of different factors that go into this formula, that the 1 to 10 formula.
And that's step one. Step two might have even been bigger. Step two was about a year and a half into it, a lot of our anglers started commenting or maybe getting upset with, oh my gosh, your Epic Day rating was a Wednesday and I had to work. No way I could get off work. You've got a poor rating a tough rating on the weekend. What advice do you have for me? So again, we went to the drawing board. We went to our basic scientific principles and using kind of a Moneyball methodology, gathered all the best information from the industry. Bassmaster, FLW, MLF, Wired to Fish, Bass Resource, tons of books. Hired a couple of interns. Started to understand what goes into a pattern, Location, presentation, baits. So we identified 9 bass seasons from winter, pre-spawn, post-spawn, winter, pre-spawn, spawn, post-spawn, so on. 22 possible lake locations from main lake points to creek channels to humps, right? 22 categories of baits. And then are they going to be aggressive or not aggressive? And so we started to put together this pretty complicated matrix, and we tried to keep it simple by saying, okay, if you're in a certain bass season in this location and the fish are going to be active, here's your top 3 or 4 lake locations and your top 5 baits to try. And it's been a real big hit, Angie. I mean, we even hear from pro anglers that they'll look at us before a trip, and we're compliant because we're not sharing spots on lakes, so we're actually tournament compliant. Where they'll use this kind of as a fallback, whereas an amateur might use this more as a primary. Like we're like their guide in their pocket, right? And so that's been really rewarding because we have customers that have lots of different desires. Some want to be pointed in the right direction from the get-go. Some like to figure it out on their own, but they like to have a fallback if they're having a tough day in the water. And so we call it adapted patterns because it's truly adapted to the weather and the bass season for any specific GPS location in the world.
That's pretty impressive. And when I first downloaded the app, I saw that you can look at the forecast, you can look at the days in advance and see and plan when you're going to go out. But I was thinking, well, I fish tournaments, I can't really pick and choose which days I'm going to go out. So that's a really nice feature. And I'm still learning. I think a lot of pro anglers will tell you they're still learning. I mean, you never stop learning when it comes to bass fishing. So it's nice to have this app to look at and be like, you can kind of guess based on your knowledge of where you think the bass are going to be. But to look at this app with all this data that you have inputted, you can kind of be like, that's what I thought. Or, it's kind of cool like that.
And they're not always doing what we say, right?
Right.
I mean, that's the fun. That's the challenge.
Yeah.
I mean, if you take the numbers and you multiply them by each other, 9 bass seasons, 17 lake locations, 22 categories, come up with like 4,000 possibilities, right?
Yeah.
So, and there is a joy to figuring out on your own. And we don't suck the joy out of fishing. In fact, most of our anglers don't even have the app on the water. It's a pre-planning app. And in 60 seconds, you can take a look at what we think the bass season's going to be, what we think the pattern's going to be. But you still got to go out there and do it yourself, right? But this is what the pros do. That's what they do, right? They look at it and they try to figure out. And the number one regret pros have, and it's interesting because FLW, in their February 2021 edition, magazine edition and online edition, they interviewed 10 of their top anglers. What their number one regret was, or which they could do differently, and it was by far the number one answer was adapting to changing conditions. We all get stuck in the past. We all get stuck in a rut. I do it myself. I mean, there are times when I haven't used my app and I've been burned, and I'll open my app and go, oh, shoot. The weather's changed, the patterns change. And that's what we hear a lot from pros, too, is this helps me kind of get my mind right before a tournament, where the weather's changing, especially in the spring or fall, winter, when it can be much more dynamic. And what the fish are doing right now, they're not going to be doing 5 days from now. And so this is a good way to make sure that you pack everything you need, and that you really get your mind right and have an open mind. And I think really successful people, like you said, are always learning, right? And and they have an idea and a plan, but they're not stuck in a rut. They're not like concrete, right? Be ready, not set.
Right.
And that's what we help people do. Be ready, not set.
Yeah. And it's great, too, because a lot of times, and you hear this over and over again, we get practice days leading up to a tournament. The fish may be doing one thing during practice, and then when the tournament starts, it's like completely flipped upside down. And so it's nice to keep that open mind and, not just get stuck on fishing all those places you've fished in practice when they're not producing anything.
Oh, that is so funny. When we first launched the Adapted Patterns feature, we have an FLW Costa Series angler on our pro staff, and they were fishing a tournament down in Lake Amistad, South Texas, and it was January, and I'll never forget this. And he says, Mike, there's going to be a winter pattern, it's been cold, blah, blah, blah. And I said, Eric, there's going to be 3 days in a row of 80 degrees, and our formula is picking up on a pre-spawn pattern that fish are going to be moving up to staging areas. And this was 10 days before the tournament began. And furthermore, that the rating was going to indicate like fast-moving baits. Sure enough, the gentleman that won the tournament won it in a very specific area that he called the migration route to a spawning area, which was a ditch, which was the exact type of structure that we indicated on our map, and on a rattle trap, which we were recommending as one of the top 5 baits, despite the common sentiment that they might still be in a winter pattern. And that angler obviously was just more adaptable than the others, and that's why he won the tournament. So our app is all about making you adaptable and understanding how the weather is going to affect the bite 10 days from now.
Well, I think it's a tool that everybody should have, and I've been here at ICAST. I was working with the Stealth Rod Holders booth today, and a couple guys came by, and I saw they had BassForecast on their tag, and so I started talking to him, and he told me this awesome story about how he downloaded the app, did what it said, went out and caught a 10-pound bass, and so he was pretty much sold from then on.
I caught my first 10 using the app too, and I know it sounds like self-serving because I'm the founder, but it's true. It was 2 years ago, and I had caught 4 or 5 fish over 9 pounds, but I couldn't quite get that 10. And it was mid to late July. I don't remember the exact date. It was around July 20th, and it had been really hot in Texas. The fish were deep, lethargic, been 100 degrees like 10 days in a row. And suddenly I get a mobile alert that 10 days from now was going to be an epic day to fish. And I realized, and then I looked at why, and it was because it was a little bit of a cold front coming through, a little bit of cool rain. And you know what happens with largemouth bass when it's been 100 degrees 10 days in a row and all of a sudden there's a cool rain? They really go on a feeding spree. And so I had enough time to, even though it was the middle of the week, I had enough time to rearrange my work schedule. I packed a bag. I got to the lake and I looked at the suggested baits and it said spinnerbait. And I'm not a big spinnerbait fan, but I threw one on and it suggested spinnerbait because the algorithm again picked up on the fact that the fish might be roaming around. So those big fish that are normally in real thick, heavy brush piles in deep creek channels were literally roaming on top. And I couldn't believe it. So, yeah, I caught my first 10 ever as a result of being motivated to go on a day I would not have otherwise gone, and using the specific bait that we recommended.
That's amazing. I'm sure you've heard tons of stories like that, probably even bigger fish caught using the suggestions with the app.
We have about 5,000 stories from our customers. And if you look in the App Store and on Google Play, we have 8,800 reviews just on Apple alone. And so, there's so many, I hate to say it, like everyone claims, this will help you catch more fish. And, lures are shiny and cute, but when you begin to learn as you become more knowledgeable, that lure is just a tool. If you know where they're located and what their activity is and what the most likely lures are, you start looking at them as tools. And, we have, for $10 a year, we're worth 100 lures.
Oh, yeah.
Right? That if you know that, you can catch them on anything close that mimics. Now, with that said, I love new lures. I think one of the things that new lures or a better lure or a better presentation does for an angler, there's been a lot of studies done on fishing pressure. from both in fishermen and BASS, and no doubt that fish learn. And it's not like they're learning like humans do, right? But they're creatures of nature. So if you've been stung by a bee once, you know that, hey, that yellow and black thing, it's going to hurt, right? So next time I change the color to purple, and okay, I got bit again. Okay, now it's whatever looks like that bee shape. So now you got to change the shape a little bit, right? Yeah. So as a fish gets older and wiser, mimicking natural forage and unusual movements and igniting their predatory instincts become more and more important. So yeah, I think lure innovation is very important. I'm not diminishing lures. I'm just saying that if you know where they're located and what they're feeding on, it's much more powerful than a shiny lure. A shiny lure thrown in the wrong place at the wrong time doesn't matter.
I think number one is knowing where they're located.
Yeah,
I mean, if
absolutely.
you're not fishing where the fish are, forget about it. You could throw anything all day long and you're not going to catch fish.
Yeah, absolutely.
So $10 a year. Right now you have a deal with Tackle Warehouse. That's where right. You subscribe, you get a $10 coupon to Tackle Warehouse, right?
That's right, and it's unconditional. It's good on anything in the store. There is a $50 minimum order, but I don't think anyone goes on Tackle Warehouse and orders. Plus, you get the free shipping. Right. So there's no strings attached.
Yep. Yeah, I did that. I saw that, and I'm like, well, it's a win-win. I got stuff I need to order anyways, so it's basically a free app, and now I have all this information at my fingertips. So there's really no reason why somebody listening shouldn't go download the app. If you like to fish at all, bass fish, this is definitely something you need to have.
And when you think about it, Angie, an app's not a product, right? Bass Pro Shops has an app. That doesn't mean they're an app company. It's what the app does. It's the software that's the value. We even license some of our software, like our Sonar data. If you go to wiredtofish.com or bassresource.com, those Sonar tables are ours because we've got our Sonar formula accurate to within 1 minute of U.S. Naval Observatory moon position for anywhere in the world. So even for saltwater, if you're in a place where you don't have a tidal chart, it's going to be at moon overhead. You look at our app, moon overhead's accurate within 1 minute of wherever you are in the world, right? So it's that kind of philosophy that we're always trying to make our anglers help, catch more fish. But yeah, with Tackle Warehouse, it's been a great relationship.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to put links to everything in the show notes for this episode, and we'll share some photos of some of these epic catches that have been caught using the app. And if that doesn't motivate you to download it, I don't know what would. So thank you so much for taking some time out of your busy schedule at ICAST to talk about it, and so we can share it with everybody who isn't already familiar. And I just wish you the best of luck in everything you're doing.
Thank you, Angie. And wish you happy bass fishing to everyone.